in all this would be to try to create a much more transparent user experience. So how do we connect all these fragmented payment systems, all these fragmented methods and loyalties and rewards and coupons? Now do we create a holistic experience for the consumer? So for me, mobile commerce is, and I think David said it when he had the opening, it's all about connecting buyers and sellers. And then hopefully we can be additive in that process.
Todd Reserve with BlackBerry Commerce. I'm responsible for BlackBerry World's system to accept payment transactions for digital goods and services in 160 countries. And for me, mobile commerce is how to make the commerce experience better, but also more frictionless, but also to see how online can grow into offline, how we can leverage the wallets that are in the mobile environment currently into the online world.
I'm Timothy Grayson. I'm with Canada Post. I'm responsible for digital product development and around our ePost product. That takes me into areas of authentication and identity, near but not into payments per se, I suppose, secure digital delivery and a host of other things. And what does mobile commerce, what he said.
Hi there, I'm Will Giles from MasterCard. I look after emerging payments for Canada, and that includes things like mobile payments and e-commerce and PayPass and P2P, those types of things. And mobile payments to me are payments, essentially every device that you can get a connection to the internet, we'd like to turn into a commerce device, and I would consider that a mobile payment.
Hi, I'm Derek Colford. I was just the last man added to this panel, as you can see I don't have a table in front of me. But I'm responsible for mobile payments at Visa. I'm going to be very, very short. We've got 5 guys and probably have a lot to say. Mobile commerce to me is all about before, during, and after the purchase and how we can empower consumers with their mobile device to make more intelligent decisions.
All right, so we're expecting you guys to be transparent, to be engaging. We're getting late in the evening, so the 2 credit card guys at the end, no fighting. All right, if we need to split you up, let us know. So we'll start off with something fairly easy and non-threatening. There's obviously been a lot of announcements over the last couple of months around mobile payments. And what I'd like to know from you guys is, do you think we're actually entering wallet wars? Or do you think we're actually doing something different? You can start with that, Chucky.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. I think that there was an article last week Global Mail that said something around Rogers taking on the banks and the wallet wars. So I think it's very different than that. We obviously deal with all the issuers in Canada. We deal with all the payment networks in Canada. We deal with all the telcos. We're trying to build an ecosystem. I think at the end of the day, and you know, the consumer will be a winner. Everybody plays a role. When you try to take an existing process that works with people putting, plastic cards in envelopes and mailing them out, etc., and you change that into a digital experience, there's going to be some people that disappear, some people are entrants, and I don't necessarily think that there's a war room. I certainly think that there is an aspiration from all the parties, a very well-intentioned aspiration from all the parties to create a better experience for the consumer. So I don't necessarily think that there's a wallet war. It doesn't mean that we can't have a skirmish here or there, but in general, I don't think there's a war going.
Any other comments?
Yeah, sure. I'd say that there's definitely some skirmishes but I also think one of the things that kind of makes me cringe over the years is hearing the word and the phrase a mobile wallet. We're not really managing consumer expectations if we start calling it that, and the only thing you can do with it is pay or loyalty. There's many other things in your wallet these days that if we're going to call it a wallet, we're going to need to solve for. So I think we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. I think there will be skirmishes, but in order to manage consumer expectations appropriately, we should probably start referring to them as payment apps.
And I'll just add to that by saying that I don't think it's a war. I think it's more like a race. And I think a little bit of healthy competition creates innovation, and that's what we need in this space, to find those solutions that add the value that our consumers need. Just putting a card into a phone, which we've now been able to do and show that it works, is nice, but it isn't the value that our consumers are looking for. We need to find those things, as Derek said, before and after the transaction that add value to consumers. And that's the race that I see happening. It's not a war, it's a race to innovate.
So you're seeing, Tim or Todd, anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, actually, because Derek and people from his organization, from your organization, from PayPal, and other places have come to see me, of course, because they all have wallets. So there's no wallet war going on, but everybody's coming over to tell me about their wallet and how I can white label it. If there is a war that comes up for wallets, it would be very disappointing on at least two levels. On the first level, any war, if it's a battle fought, is going to leave a whole lot of holes in the landscape afterwards. So that means that whatever new order appears afterward is going to have a tough go of it. But perhaps as importantly, I think that what these guys were saying and what I heard earlier on from the fellow from Rogers was, if it's all just about payment and making the phone a form factor and paying, and maybe even just having something like a loyalty card in there, or doggone it, I can put my coupons in, that is colossally short-sighted. Because from my point of view, if you're talking about tipping points, that ain't going to do it. There's so much more to make that experience better, and it turns payment into a tiny little part of an overall experience or transaction, like PayPal was just showing, for instance. Anyways.
So, from a merchant point of view, because I'm primarily a merchant for BlackBerry, we integrate into two wallets, right? We integrate into PayPal, but we also integrate into a lot of carrier wallets through carrier billing. At the end of the day, for a merchant, I just care where the money is, right, and what the consumers want. So from a merchant point of view, I don't care. I would love it to be more wallets, but you've got to have consumer adoption and the willingness for people to use it. Once that's there, I mean, to your point as a merchant, if you can show me lots of transactions and lots of money, I'll integrate to it because I can drive an ROI. But until that point, who cares?
But it's also, just to, if I can wrap it up, because there's a big difference between where we are today and where we need to be, right? So we need to be in a place where you can buy something, you get coupons come with cash incentives as well as loyalty incentives and all kinds of other things. And as you walk out the store, you get a receipt, digital receipt, and all this other good stuff. And you don't have to think. And the payment does to the wise man of Jack Dorsey. It does become seamless, something magical like that. But it'll take a while, right? Because it's all these different ecosystems, all these different components, all these different players with all kinds of different drivers and motivational drivers that they kind of operate with and have. I think where we are today, and when you look at the announcements last week from TD and PC Financials around Hugo and our announcement around the short tap wallet, etc., I don't necessarily think that there's any, certainly from our perspective, and I think John would probably agree, is that we're under no illusion that is not the end state. That is a line in the sand, because in order to get to that point, you have to do a certain number of things. So I think that what is good to see about the Canadian landscape as it stands today is that people are actually now doing stuff that will have an impact on consumers, and from there on, it'll only get better.
So let's pull on your point, though, Tim, and Derek as well at the app side. When we look at things from the consumer's lens, right? You can say we're looking at it from a bank lens or from a telco's lens to say we're bringing wallets to the market. We're enabling a platform that users can start to get on and get out and use. But to your point, what is it that consumers want? I mean, we've seen PayPal's presentation. We've seen other presentations that speak to segments of what consumers have as one issue. Where do you start? Where do you start to focus? How do we start to really prioritize what matters?
$64,000 question right there.
Sure.
Just so everybody knows, I think my purpose here is to make you all feel good, Because you're gonna go home saying, geez, I learned a lot from all those experts, and there was that one guy, I'm smarter than he is. That's me. But having said that, you could have laughed a lot more. Having said that, I don't know, because I'm not inside the industry, but ignorance being bliss allows me to ask ignorant questions. And so I contacted 20 or 30 of my colleagues that are in, some in payments, some in research, some in identity, some in a variety of different places. And the consensus response had predictable results, but one theme came through. And I phrase it this way: is this a solution in search of a problem? Are consumers really that distraught by the cash in their pocket, the credit cards they can draw on, the debit cards that are amazingly well penetrated, and all the other payment capabilities, from a Starbucks loyalty program that sits as an app on my phone through to a stored value card anywhere else? Is there really anything in there that would say I need a different payment mechanism? And the response that I got anyways was no. But you're right, you gotta start someplace. It's just that the topic is what will take a tipping point, and where we're at today, we're like sitting on the real far end of a teeter-totter with about 4 people on the other side. There ain't gonna be a lot of tipping real fast.
That's a good point, and I think commerce is probably one of those things that you've got to get the platform in place first to allow the payment before you can get to the commerce piece. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, and so to put this into perspective, I'm having a lot of trouble convincing my mother to use PayPass, but there are 80% of Canadians that know about contactless, and a huge percentage of Canadians are using it. So mobile payments probably aren't for everybody, at least in the early stages. But what we're very laser focused on is finding those value-added applications. We're focused on the payment first because we need to get the payment nailed, and I think we're pretty much there. And now what we're doing is we're starting to build out other capabilities. So the developer challenge we ran, Nick and my team ran that. It was an idea that came out of our group, and it's similar to what the Mint did, so I guess it's not extremely novel. But that was to create additional innovation, more ideas, get the developer community that's building apps for iPhone and Android to do some work for us too, because we can't afford to build it all on our own, and our customers can't afford to build it all on their own. And you know, quite frankly, in a weekend, it was actually 28 hours of work. We came up with 22 different solutions that I think many of them could go to market and be very successful. Yes, we're at early stages, but the reality is we'll get the payment down, we get some of the technology hurdles out of the way.
That was great.
And then the next step is to find those value-added solutions that will really drive value for consumers. The example Nick showed you earlier with the solution out of Singapore, that is a great first step to add value, but it's by no means an end point. It's a bit of a journey we're on, and the good news is that Canada is a market where we're ripe for this innovation. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to squander what I consider a leadership position. Contactless, between the major brands in Canada, we have a huge advantage over most markets in the world. And that's why NFC is still relevant in this market. You look to the US and they say, well, maybe not NFC now. Well, they don't have the same environment we do. So I really do think we're at a great point, and we're just taking off now. We're just starting to take off. And not quite at the tipping point, but there you have it.
So let's ask one of the tougher questions. And one of the earlier panelists went along and said, what phone do you have? What phone do you have? And we saw 3 out of the 4 folks had Apple phones. We talked about NFC and say, how do we solve for Apple in the States if a large percentage of the community is using Apple phones? How do you hit ubiquity without somehow addressing that market? What are your thoughts there? It's a lot of silence, guys.
I'm ready to go, but I have to give other people a chance.
It's an obvious answer to the question, but we address that addressable market when we put an NFC antenna into that device. Until you do that, you can use a case with a micro SD card. You can throw a sticker on that phone. but you can't solve for it, and it's not ours to solve.
You really have to worry too much about the technology. Like I understand that if we're talking about specific contact, it's an issue, right? But you can still create as it stands today. And I agree, at some point in time, there will probably be an NFC antenna in there, and it will be used for whatever it's going to be used for. But at the end of the day, you can still create a very compelling experience for consumers, whether it comes with NFC or not. It's just absolutely different than the experience you will have on one of the other devices out there that happens to be using NFC today.
Okay, and so MasterCard and Visa, we function in over 210 different countries around the world, and the solutions that meet Canada's needs, NFC is ripe in this country. It's not going to be the same in every country, so we do a lot of experimentation with other solutions. We have a company, internal group called MasterCard Labs that is building out great new solutions, one called Quicker, where it's from the cloud, but you're still paying with our MasterPass wallet. But it doesn't need an NFC interface. And NFC will address a good chunk of the market in Canada, but there'll be other solutions for other consumer needs and other merchant needs. So we're just at the beginning of this. It's not all going to be one size fits all. We had a luxury in the past where a magstripe card would work anywhere around the world. The future isn't going to have one solution, I don't think. I think it's going to address consumer needs, and consumers are going to choose how they want to pay.
That's an interesting issue. So I work for Canada Post. We operate in one country around the world.
You said
So that's another interesting response I got from my little survey, which was about standardization. So this notion of it's my card or it's their wallet or it's somebody else's, and the consumer will pick one or the other. Unless at both ends, my app works everywhere. My iPhone can deal with what it needs to, and I can go to a store and they don't say, sorry, we don't do that. You wouldn't walk into a sporting goods store and they say, yes, we only do Visa because our device is only for Visa. If they're half clever, one device, both Visa and MasterCard. I finished each other on that. But that's part and parcel of the consumer experience that you got to head for. Simple things. So again, it's not that far in the future, based at least on what I've seen tonight. Anybody an occasional visitor to the LCBO? Just once. I've been there once. When I went, they accept the Air Miles card, right? My wife is a fiend for the Air Miles card. It's a real pain for me to carry it around. I don't. And so every time I go, she gives me shit after. She causes me an incredible amount of grief and forces me to go back on my way home from work the next day to bring the receipt back with the stupid card so that you can get the points, which is great. Now, if you're going to go to a wallet on a phone, it would be really cool if that wallet knew I was there, and that wallet paid the way I wanted to, and it said, oh, by the way, you recorded that stupid Air Miles card, I just got you your points. And if you don't buy this brand of rum, but you walk over and get the other brand of rum, they're, Captain Morgan's offering $3 off on a little vodka. That kind of thing starts taking you down the path where I say, I'm throwing away the iPhone. That's pretty rash, but I'm throwing away the iPhone. I'm getting a phone that does this because it's meaningful to me. And even if it's more than the liquor store, probably would be meaningful.
So Jeffy, you can swear now. Go ahead and swear. Use that as his bad words.
I can beat that.
So use the LCBO. I think some of those types of features that you're talking about, a lot of these guys will tell you that we're going to be working on, or are already working on. If you look at Starbucks, so Starbucks has been touted as a leader in mobile payments to date. They were probably one of the earlier ones to the table. Do you guys think they're a leader in mobile payments, in mobile commerce?
I do, because they take PayPass now.
Okay, so without the bribery.
I would say definitely a leader. but I would say they're a leader not necessarily, nothing to do with its technology. You walk into a Starbucks and those folks behind the counter literally go to barista university in order to be there serving you coffee. So they have an incredible degree of control over that human interface. And I think it's that human element at Starbucks that really makes an incredible difference. And I really don't think it has anything to do with the technology.
I mean, I think I was just at a mobile conference, or actually a payments conference, and one of the speakers mentioned that Uber was one of the leaders also in mobile payments. And they also referenced Starbucks. And I think it's not about the payments, it's about the experience, right? And Uber's got an Uber valuation right now based on their uptake. And that's where as I hear this conversation, to me, I think we're still missing the point, which it is the commerce experience. I mean, we heard that from Jimmy at PC Financial, and we also saw the great PayPal illustration. It's yes, there is a payment element to it, but it's about the experience. And I think what's going to happen is merchants, especially what I heard from PC, are going to leapfrog the payments guys, where at the end of the day, payments is just going to be something that happens in the future versus the consumer's going to really think about payments. So I'd agree with you.
So think about Starbucks for just a second. So I'm Schultz now, and you guys come along and you say, I want to put a PayPass in, I want to put Visa Music. And I go, hey, wait a minute, I'm storing a whole whack of dough in these applications, and I'm playing the float. Why do I want to give that to you? Like, I've gone out there. What is my incentive at this point? And I have none, because I've got my app. My app gives a pretty decent experience. Pretty soon it'll look like the PayPal demo we saw, where I can order my coffee and I can order my thing and I'm good to go. Payment is, I think, like you said, it's just that tiny little end of the whole experience of shopping, selling, comparing, all of that stuff.
The Starbucks solution, I don't think scales if it's prepaid and you've got to store a balance everywhere. After a little while, you're going to get tired of tying up $20 everywhere you go. So it's got to be, if that solution is going to scale, it has to be open. And why would you create stored value all over the place when we've got great open solutions like MasterCard and Visa?
So I will refrain from swearing. So I think a couple of things. I think that Starbucks got it right in terms of the user experience, right? So I think that it is a good experience. It's a little bit cool. It fits very nicely with the brand. So it's a very holistic experience for the end consumer. I think what makes it useful, what makes it scale and work for them is that it's vertically integrated. That means that their microcosm, which is their 1,800 stores, 2,500 stores, whatever the case might be, can all be outfitted with the right reader and the right this and the right that, and we can push all these store cards and gift cards and what have you to these consumers. So I think it works very well in that environment. I think the challenge, or what we're trying to fix, and what we're trying to solve for, is an environment that is not fully in one person's control. It is, I wish it was. I wish that I could call up John and I could call up Derek and call Will and we could all kind of get together and over a long weekend we could fix it all. But the point is that unfortunately it's not the situation. There are multiple different point of sale terminals, there are multiple different merchants out there. There's multiple different banks, there's multiple different wireless operators, there's multiple different mobile devices is what we discussed. So it's a little bit more of trying to find the lowest common denominator, which gives you as broad of a reach so you can actually create a meaningful experience, perhaps not for everybody, but for as many as you possibly can. And by the way, I think if we ask the people that have been building Visa and MasterCard networks and which are the banks and those networks for the last 40, 50 years, how much effort it takes to set up these networks, they'd probably tell us we should stay out. We'd probably listen to them and we'd stay out. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, to be quite frank. So the vision is very compelling. I think everybody understands the value of that vision, but it's that balancing act between how do you get there, where do you start, and how do you reach as many people as possible.
So we're getting the hook here, but maybe if we're going to wrap this up with a couple of thoughts from each of you. We've heard that the user experience is obviously what's going to matter. We've heard that we're not going to have wallet wars, we might have wallet skirmishes, but we likely need to partner together somehow to figure out how to meet customers' needs. We don't want this to be a problem looking for a solution or a solution looking for a problem. We actually want to solve customers' needs and make life easier and actually drive some adoption. So if you look forward going into 2014, what's the one thing you'd tell this audience in terms of how we make some traction and progress in mobile commerce?
Everybody should get in that short tab wallet thing. It sounds like the short thing.
So we got to partner with you.
That's right.
All right.
I'm betting on the high school kids and where they're going to go, and primarily I think that they're going to see the convergence. Yeah, let's give another round. I've got a 15-year-old son. I see what he does on the mobile phone, and I see how he's interacting with his friends, and I ultimately think that you'll see a convergence not only around mobile and commerce, but social is going to have to get in here as well. And where do people spend all their time is on the social side, and I think that's where you'll see some further integration.
I don't know that I can answer your question because I'm not sure what it was. I didn't hear it. I heard 2014. So if I was observing 2014, I'd be watching two sets of giants try and play nice in the same space where they each had dominion, right? So telcos, this is my domain. Credit card guys, this is my domain. And now you got to play nice and try and do it together. I think it'll be fascinating to watch how that unfolds.
I agree.
I'd buy tickets to that.
You're the main event.
But in all seriousness, the thing I see happening over the next year is more and more players will get into, banks and telcos will get into issuing devices, putting wallets out there or phones out there that can hold cards. And what it'll be like is right now we've got one or two players out there, and it's a little bit like a funnel because you can't get as many, like let's say it's the CIBC card went first. So CIBC card holders on Rogers network with the right phone, and before long you've got 400 people. We've got to widen out that funnel, and that's what we're going to do over the next year. So we're going to get more banks, more telcos, more devices, and more cards in action, and then we're going to start to see the value come from getting the payment right and then adding value that consumers are willing to adopt this technology for.
I would agree with Will that I think one of the things we need to get rid of in a quick manner are those various distillation points where as you go through them you get 400 consumers. I think technically, I think what I'm seeing with Google and their host card emulation and their KitKat operating system is going to make some interesting waves. I also think from a user experience perspective, what I think we're going to see a bit more of, and I hope we see a lot of, is the use of data and location. Because I think those are two critical elements that if utilized effectively and with the consumer's consent, they can really provide a ton of value for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things from our perspective. I think next year is going to be interesting. I think there's no doubt that throwing out brand new form factors is never an easy thing. You do it the first time. You got to get the right devices. You got to get the right, samples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we'll see next year is a number of ways that is going to commercially launch these services the same way that CBC is launched. You're going to see a lot more different wallets and applications, etc. And you're going to see a lot of new innovation. And I think as all these things come, it may look confusing from the outset, but it's all part for the course, right? Part for the course. It's all just what has to take place before everything settles, and then there will be a clearer trajectory towards the future. So I actually think the next year you'll see a lot more kind of announcements around things to come. I even think that perhaps this year you'll see more.
Thanks very much to our panel. On to the bar.